Hi everyone. In today's video, I'm going to discuss something called the after only experimental design. Now, you have to understand what is experimental design before you can understand what is the after only experimental design. As you know, my name is Sam, and my objective of making these videos are that I want to make short videos on research concepts so that you get an idea of the topic, and then if you want you can find out more about it, but this gives you a snapshot view of what you need to know or need to explore more on. So without much ado, let's get started. So what is experimental design? Experimental design is when a researcher is trying to establish the causality, or they are trying to investigate the causality of a phenomena or an event. So here the researcher waits for an intervention to occur. Either the researcher introduces the intervention themselves, or they wait for someone else to introduce it and then wait for some time for the effect to be caused, and then they investigate that. So let me take an example here by explaining what is the after only experimental design. So in after only experimental design, the researcher is very aware that a certain population, that a certain sample is being subjected to an intervention, and now the researcher is waiting for the effect of the intervention to take place and then investigate the causality, whether the effect or the intervention has led to a certain causality or not. So let me give you an example. Now here the example is, let's say you are trying to investigate if random breath testing leads to a reduction in the number of road accidents or car accidents. Now here the baseline data is not collected by you, it is collected by secondary resources. It is available in secondary resources. So it could be something that you have found out that during the period of Christmas and New Year, people tend to drink more, and if there is an absence of breath testing, then it leads to car accidents on the highway or road accidents. Now you find out that the traffic police of a certain area is conducting random breath testing in that area, and you wait for the random breath testings to be over, and then after the period of Christmas and New Year you find out whether that led to a reduced number of accidents or not. So the baseline data is in the historical resources or historical sources. An intervention is caused by a third party, and you investigate if that intervention caused by a third party or introduced by a third party has led to the effect of reduced number of accidents. So does random breath testing cause a number of reduced road accidents or reduced car accidents on the highway? Another example is where a baseline data is provided by the respondents based on their memory, but you don't collect the baseline data. So here you can say that it has been mentioned by couples, that couples who are not undergoing therapy or marriage counseling are leading to divorce or separation. Now this is based on the recollection of couples, that couples believe that absence of any counseling is leads to divorces, right? So again the baseline data is provided by couples who were probably separated, who got divorced, who did not undergo marriage therapy. That data is available. You have not collected that data. That data is a secondary data, and based on that now you deduce, or now you realize that okay, if you as a researcher or if someone else introduces marriage therapy or marriage counseling as an intervention, does that cause lesser number of divorces or separations between couples? Alright, so some data is available in the secondary sources such as previous publications or government data or reports. Some data is available by the recollection of the participants. In this case, of course, participants who got separated or divorced, they felt that if they had undergone therapy, they would have not separated or divorced. Now, what is the problem with this? The problem with this is that the baseline data is not your data. So there could be a lot of discrepancies in the data. There could be a lot of arguments against this data regarding how this data was collected, what were the ethical considerations, what were some of the extraneous variables, what were some of the independent variables that were acting on this research. Similarly, when you investigate the effect of the intervention, again there could be arguments that certain variables were not controlled for. For example, if you kind of deduce that marriage therapy or marriage counseling leads to a reduced number of divorces or separation, you cannot establish the causality here for sure, because that reduced number of divorces or separations could be because of other reasons as well, because this is not your experiment. You are not controlling this experiment. Somebody else is introducing the variables, somebody else is introducing the intervention, somebody else is choosing the sample data. You are purely trying to establish the causality. You are not controlling the variables. The sample size is not controlled by you. Sometimes it can lead to a problem here. And similarly the baseline data as well, because you are not involved in the collection of the baseline data, there could be discrepancies, there could be flaws in the baseline data. So even if a researcher argues that yes, I did not collect the baseline data, but I did carry out the intervention and I did establish the causality of that effect, you also have to explain why there are no discrepancies in the baseline data. So it could be that the data that you have collected, the baseline data you have collected about couples getting separated or divorced, what if that data was collected from European nations and you are carrying out a experiment in the Asian subcontinent. So as we know that the Asian subcontinent could be more conservative, more traditional, more religious in nature, and because of that the number of divorces are low, and it has nothing to do with marriage counseling or therapy. And similarly, the baseline data that you collected maybe or that you gathered from a European context, it is more because the society there is more open to divorces and separations, or the society in a certain place is not open to marriage therapy or marriage counseling. So you have to explain the other variables that may influence the result of this intervention. So even if it is you who is causing the intervention and gathering the data, you have to explain how the data that you have gathered post intervention from a sample, how is that sample similar to the sample that was in the baseline data. So if your sample differs very, it has big differences, and especially because you were not involved in the collection of baseline data, then of course reviewers and examiners will question the authenticity of your research. They will question the validity and reliability of your research. So that becomes a problem. However, this type of research is often carried out when it is not possible for you to get the baseline data. Let's say an example being that if you're trying to study the Suez system of the 1960s, or you're trying to study about the people who underwent the great era of depression or the global financial crisis. Now you cannot go back in time and gather data then. You have to interview people, you have to gather historical data, or you have to rely on secondary data resources. This is the time when you use the after only experimental design. So I hope this video was useful. I will make more videos on the different types of experimental design and introduce them to you. Please let me know if I have missed something or there's something you want to add. Please like, share, comment and subscribe. And the only idea behind these videos is for us to learn from one another so that it helps us with our research studies. Bye for now guys, and I'll see